everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled to be with you all. And I have to just say, I was reflecting this morning. It is such a great time to be working in urban forestry in Los Angeles. We have Francisco as our new research social scientist. We have Kat as an urban ecologist from the city. And I'll talk a little bit about my role as a city forest officer. And why a city forest officer? In the city of LA, this role was initially identified as a need back in the 1990s, where an urban forestry task force said, hey, we need someone who's doing coordination across departments. And so for a little bit of context, Los Angeles is about 500 square miles and employs, the city employs about 40,000 people. So it is a really massive jurisdiction, which is of no surprise to you, I'm sure. But and within that, there's about 1 million publicly managed trees. We estimate, we're redoing our inventories for our parks and streets right now, but we estimate around 1 million public space trees that the city manages. And we have a number of different departments that touch trees in a variety of ways. Our planning department, Bureau of Engineering, Department of Water and Power, as I'm sure you all experience in your municipalities as well. But due to the scale and complexity of our city system as well as our landscape, they identified the need for this role of city forest officer. And I'm really thrilled to be in this position, particularly with the wonderful team and leadership that is currently at the city. So when we talk about the urban forest, one, we expect it to provide us many benefits and services. So we're looking to the urban forest to address particularly urban issues like urban heat island, stormwater management, air quality, and improve quality of life for our residents. In Los Angeles, this is particularly true. Obviously, trees offer also habitat value that is really important for us. But in Los Angeles, our urban forest is largely human-made. We had trees in our riparian and hillside areas, but large portions of Los Angeles were chaparral, did not historically have trees. But they also didn't historically have streets and people and all the things that come with that population. So within Los Angeles, we've been talking a lot about what benefits and services we need to be receiving from trees, and additionally talking about what I've been referring to as the pillars of urban forest management, that this human-made system that requires our constant intervention needs investments and strong policies in the areas of tree planting, maintenance, preservation, and community engagement. That human component where we have a lot of strong feelings and opinions about what our neighborhoods should look and feel like, and again, what benefits we want to be receiving from those urban trees. So some of our LA urban forest context is, again, as I've already laid out, it is human-made. About 90%, it's estimated 90% of our urban forest is located on private property, so not managed by the city, but we know that those trees are really important for providing health and other benefits. It's not equitably distributed. So some neighborhoods have a lot of tree canopy and others don't, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And as I've already said, it's used primarily to address urban issues as well as provide ecosystem services, including that habitat value. In LA right now, we have our mayor, Eric Garcetti, who's laid out LA's Green New Deal, which on the screen here, you're going to see the page that has tree-related goals and targets, and very, very specific goals, which I think is really exciting to have really clear leadership. We know where we have some work to do, and there's some very specific goals around that. And we also have a tremendous amount of work that's being done looking at biodiversity within the city of LA. And I have the pleasure of working with the team that has been working on the biodiversity report and having their expertise and their work influence and add to the decisions we're making around our urban forest and urban trees. So when it comes to tree canopy equity, I want to hone in on this for a moment. We have in Los Angeles this green swath in the middle is our Santa Monica Mountains hillside areas. And then we have our, other geographic areas where you see that we just don't have as much tree canopy cover. And by and large, the areas have low tree canopy cover, also have other environmental justice issues So it's really important for us to address this historic issue. And we've been aware of it for some time. You know, there was a study done in 2006 by Dr. Craig McPherson that identified an equitably distributed canopy. What we have now, though, is a very clear target provided by our mayor to increase tree canopy by 50% by 2028 in those areas of greatest need to provide those benefits and services from trees. So how do we deal with that tree canopy inequity? How do we address those issues and ensure that all Angelenos are receiving benefits and services from trees? Well, we have some really tremendous challenges. One is space. So we know that trees are going to be healthy and long-lived if they have adequate soil volumes. We also, I'll jump ahead for a moment here, we also know that bigger trees provide exponentially more benefits than smaller trees. And so I have here, you know, we know that these, the trees that grow to be larger at maturity provide us more benefits than those that are smaller, but we need to have adequate space in the ground to plant those trees that will be large at their mature size. However, planting each of these three species you see here, when planted as a 15-gallon tree in a parkway or tree well, costs the same to purchase, to plant, and to do establishment care for. And so we should be planting more big trees. So that requires space, which is at a premium in Los Angeles. And quite frequently we see in neighborhoods that have a low tree canopy cover, we also have incredibly small parkway sizes, parkway being that grassy strip between the street and the sidewalk. So either very small spaces there or areas that are just concrete that need to be cut. And how do we look at that public right-of-way space and address the other competing factors that are in that space? Right now we have some interest in sidewalk dining with the pandemic. We have, you know, all the other infrastructure pieces that are in place in that public right-of-way. And we know that we need to make more space for trees if we're going to address that tree canopy equity goal. So the next challenge I'll just touch on briefly is water. And again, I think you may be aware of some of our water issues. One is that we have an incredibly long dry season, and so we do have to provide supplemental water to newly planted trees more so than maybe other parts of the country. And then we also have issues with drought. And so we want to make sure that any trees that we plant are going to be able to be resilient in light of those periods of drought. And the last challenge and opportunity is the people. Everyone has an opinion on trees. And I will say that one of the things I found really encouraging is what Francisco shared from his research has really reflected a lot of what my experience has been in doing projects in Los Angeles. You know, over 10 years of working with community groups to build projects all over LA for tree planting. A lot of the things that his research shows really reflects what we see, which is that fruit trees are really a gateway to talking to communities that don't have a lot of tree canopy cover, and that is a way to talk to them about trees. But we also know that if we want these health benefits and protection from urban heat, that we're going to have to bridge the gap and start talking about shade trees, or have an honest conversation about what happens if we don't. So what does this lead us to? We really have to be thinking carefully about our species selection in this context, and we have to find ways to make space for large trees. The picture on the left here is from Elysian Park, our historic arboretum. There was people in the 1800s that planted a bunch of different species of trees to see what would do well in Los Angeles. This is a tipu that just is breathtaking when you get to stand underneath it. And I think that neighborhoods across LA should have these big and stunning trees that provide shade and provide that access to nature, among other things. But you can see on the right, some of our urban context is the experience people have with trees is that they bust up their sidewalks or cause other issues if they are planted inappropriately. So we need to be creating more space for these large stature trees that can provide significant benefits, and we need to be really careful about our species selection to ensure that not only do we have more big trees, but that those trees actually have the opportunity and access to soil, water, nutrients, oxygen to grow and have long-lived lives in this urban environment, which I know is a challenge for all of us. So going back to kind of the community engagement and the people component, one of the things that is really important to me is talking to folks about which of these benefits or services, what is their, not just right tree, right place, which is what you see in the previous photo. The sidewalk is being lifted by that tree. That tree is the wrong tree for that location, for those site conditions. But going beyond right tree, right place, we want to address what the reason for trees is in that neighborhood. And that's why the work with our biodiversity team, my work with CAT, and in general, our community engagement practices are so important because we want to make sure that we're really being strategic in how we invest in our urban forests, whether it is enhancing habitat connectivity and aligning with our biodiversity goals, or addressing a specific urban issue, or matching the look and feel that the community wants, that really reflects what makes that space, their neighborhood, feel like home. And so that reason, that right reason, is dynamic and complex, and we really need to make sure we're doing a good job of listening to communities and looking at lots of different data sources to get the right tree in our neighborhoods. So again, I've got just kind of my summary. We've got this context in Los Angeles. We've got these challenges, and we have some really important work ahead of us. And I'm excited to pass it on to Kat to share some of the ecological context and further describe how we're looking at the region and how we're potentially addressing some of those issues.